the awful food my kid gets every night. Me and my wife have a son, but he's been autistic since he was 4, which sucks. Even though we've tried all sorts of treatments, my son's condition hasn't gotten any better. When he turned 18, my wife said she wanted to put him in a treatment center to live. But I totally didn't agree, and we had a huge argument. My wife kept going on and on about how taking care of our son was super tough. If you think taking care of your own son is too much, then you don't have to do it anymore. I felt totally helpless, disappointed, and even desperate. After that, my wife left and never came back. Like she said, taking care of my son was really tough. He was an adult, but he couldn't do anything on his own. His mental and physical state changed too, but it was really unpredictable. But I was still gonna find a way to help my kid, no matter what. One weekend my son woke up and gave me a piece of paper. I was pretty surprised when I saw what was on it. A list of ingredients to buy for a dish. My son can't write, so the words on the paper aren't pretty, but they're pretty clear. Especially these things can't go together. Potatoes, marshmallows, mustard, chicken, and a bunch of other stuff. I thought it was a waste of food, but to make my son a bit happier, I went along with it. After picking up the ingredients and getting home, my son was super excited and started cooking right away. He wouldn't let me do anything, so I just stood back and watched. When he finished, I had no idea what to even call the dish. It was this thick brown mess with a pretty bad smell. No way that could be called a dish. But seeing my son's happy face made me happy too. He was never this happy when his mom was still around. My son gently wrapped it in plastic wrap and put it in the fridge to keep it safe. I left it there for now and figured I'd toss it when he wasn't around. I totally forgot about that nasty dish in the fridge until the next morning. I rushed to the kitchen as soon as I remembered, but when I opened the fridge, the food was gone. The dish was washed and put under the sink. I called out to my son in a panic, like, how could he eat that? He's gonna be sick with diarrhea for days, maybe even weeks. My son came over, didn't say a word to my question, and just handed me another piece of paper. It was still a long list of stuff to buy. Beef, gummy bears, celery, and so on. My son usually just writes his name with messy handwriting, so there's no way he wrote this piece of paper. I gave him a stern look and told him no. He started yelling and throwing stuff around. I felt totally helpless, trying to make my son happy again. That afternoon, another gross-looking and smelly dish appeared, all wrapped up and put in the fridge. I was set on finding a way to toss it once my son went to bed. That night, I checked the fridge and saw it was already eaten. I started to think my son wasn't the one who ate that gross food, because I'd been keeping an eye on him all evening. Going with my gut, I set up a camera in my son's room without telling him, and put 3 more around the house. In the middle of the night, my phone got an alert from the camera I had set up facing the backyard. At first, it looked like a dark shadow, but it was really weird. I zoomed in and saw it was a guy. His clothes were all ripped up, his beard was long and tangled, and his teeth were missing, filthy. He was holding a stick and pointing it at my son's window with a creepy smile. I quickly turned to the camera in my son's room. The kid stood at the window, grabbed the paper off the stick, and shoved it under the pillow fast. I jumped up and rushed out to the backyard with my gun. At that moment, I just acted on impulse. I didn't think about the gun laws and just kept firing into the dark around the yard. "Get out of here, bastard! What do you want with my son?" I yelled, and the thought of my dumb son getting hurt made it impossible for me to calm down. About 15 minutes later, the cops showed up at my place, probably because the neighbors freaked out after hearing all those gunshots. I quickly explained everything and showed them the camera footage. Being aware of the situation, the cops said they'd look for that guy and asked me to hand over the gun right away. After talking to the cops, I dashed to my son's room, found the paper he had hidden under his pillow, and it was just a long list of stuff to buy. I tore up the paper, and my son saw it and started freaking out. It took him a long time to calm down and finally fall asleep. 2 days later, the cops said they'd found a guy's body in an old house at the end of the block, and his description matched what I'd reported. He was homeless and not all there mentally. They figured his cause of death was food poisoning that led to severe dehydration and sepsis. After hearing the news, I felt pretty mixed up. I went to my son's room, and he was sitting there drawing with total focus. I cried when I saw him. Maybe I had been too strict about his treatment. Even though the incident wasn't a big deal, it made me realize I wasn't taking care of him as well as I could. It was really tough, but I had to accept sending my son to the treatment center and visit him every afternoon after work. My son's doing better now. He can read and write pretty well.